but we've actually got a call from Lise in Canada, who I think may want to perhaps touch on some similar notions. Let's see where you'd like to take it. Lise, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us what's on your mind.
Okay, well, I'm an atheist, and one thing I have noticed amongst other atheists and agnostics as well is that, you know, they have no problem kind of criticizing the Abrahamic religion, so Islam, Judaism, Christianity, but they kind of romanticize like East Asian religions like Taoism or Buddhism, and I was wondering, like, why do you think that is? Like, because I think, like, if you're going to criticize an idea, like, I don't think you should just pick and choose which ideologies to, you know, critically analyze.
Challenge, yeah.
You know.
No, I hear that. I love this.
Before Christy starts, I just want to say that you have chosen the perfect show to call and ask this question on, because of all the ACA hosts, I think both myself and Christy are probably, of everyone that I know of, the most familiar with Buddhism. So you've picked really, really good hosts to call this on. But sorry for interrupting. Carry on,
not
Christy,
at all.
please.
I was actually going to say more or less the same thing, that I am a religious trauma therapist, and I help a lot of people particularly deal with trauma that occurred because of their engagement with the Abrahamic religions. And a lot of the philosophy, a lot of the field of study that I apply in that setting does come from what we might call Buddhist psychology, and has, at least culturally, its roots in a lot of these notions. So I think this is a super important question. And I just want to start off right at the top and say, I don't think that there ought to be a difference in the critical thinking that we apply here. I don't think that there is value in giving a pass to one particular thought process or anything else, that we want to support critical thinking in all of our endeavors. So that's where I'd maybe like to set the table, just so we're all on the same page. But Richard, is there anything that you'd like to sort of respond to in that maybe accusation that that atheists are less critical here? Or perhaps less critical than they ought to be.
I think it's very interesting, because I both agree and disagree with you on this. I think largely I have noticed the same thing. I've noticed lots of atheists being very friendly, shall we say, towards a lot of Eastern religions, and not criticizing them as much as they possibly could be. And I think that's largely due down to a misunderstanding on the atheists, on a lot of atheists' point of view, because a lot of them have only come across kind of Western secular forms of these religions. And that's not particularly a fault of the atheists. It's what they've come across. And when you're speaking on something, you speak from your own knowledge and your own background. But I do agree, it is something that happens. I, however, I'm not one of those people, and I do speak out, especially against Buddhism. I've been practicing Buddhist meditation for well over 20 years. I've been studying the Buddhist scriptures academically for well over 10 years. And I do speak out against Buddhism and Buddhist practices of things. I did a video recently on a different network where I shan't advertise, but I did a video of top 10 misconceptions about Buddhism. And touched on lots of stuff in there, including the fact that there are lots of supernatural elements. There are heavens and hells. There are supernatural beings. There are supernatural powers within Buddhism. The way women are treated in Buddhism is not brilliant. So I do criticize Buddhism quite a lot. I don't get a chance to do it a lot. And I think this is the key point, and I think this is probably the key response to your question, is that we just don't get the opportunity to do it very often. On TikTok, quite a lot I see Christians coming out and saying, why do people only criticize Christianity? They don't. But the spheres that we kind of move in, the circles we move in, social media very much kind of is largely Christians and atheists talking to each other. So this is why you get a lot of kind of focus towards Christianity. Just look at this show. The majority of callers are Christians. Most of the focus is put on Christianity, not because we don't have the ability or the want or the focus to criticize other religions. It's simply because we don't get those people calling in. And, if we did, we could have those conversations. And I hugely encourage Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus to call into the show. And I'd love to have more of those conversations because, I love this stuff. This is my area. This religious studies, which is what I do, is not just about talking to Christians. And I was quite a latecomer towards kind of, if you like, criticizing, air quotes, Christianity, because I was focused for a lot of my early study career on Buddhism and Islam. So I didn't really come to Christianity and looking into that until about 5 years ago. So it's very kind of, the Christianity to me is new. So it's really funny when I hear people saying, well, people don't criticize other religions, because I kind of went the other way around. I did it backwards to the kind of common thing that we see here, where we do largely talk to Christians. But I get the criticism overall. It doesn't appear like we do. A lot of people who are atheists don't seem to, and I think that is largely because they have a skewed idea of what Buddhism and Taoism. We talked about Taoism a few weeks ago on the show, and funnily enough, that's another one where I got a lot of people who believe in Taoism or believe in kind of this Western form of Taoism, criticizing me for saying, well, actually, hang on a minute, Taoism does contain some supernatural elements.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and I got a lot of criticism from Western Taoists on that video for making those statements. So it is the thing with any religion. Look, this is my stick, and it's always been the same. The thing with any religion is you don't have Christianity. You don't have Buddhism. You don't have Islam. You have Christianities or Buddhisms or Islams. And being a secular Buddhist is a legitimate form of Buddhism and not believing in any supernatural elements. But that doesn't mean that is Buddhism. And that is what I think people have this misconception about. They mistake a legitimate form of a religion as being that religion on the whole. And I think it's something that we could all do a lot better in understanding the difference. But I've talked quite a lot, so I'm going to let you respond, and then I'm going to let Christy talk to you for a while.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that insight. I also have a bachelor's in religious studies, so you and I have something in common. Also, I wanted to say that you and I just spoke on TikTok earlier. I'm out of clonazepam is my username.
Yeah. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Anything else we can sort out for you? Hmm?
I think it's interesting that people don't, when they think of Buddhism, when they think of Hinduism, they think of, or even Taoism, they think of like creating balance in your life, which there is a part of that in those religions, of course. I mostly studied like Abrahamic traditions, but I did study some Eastern traditions. And I don't think people really understand how brutal the caste system is in Hinduism. And they say, well, it was outcasted and we don't practice that anymore. But we know that they do. It's just not official. Or widow burning, like the misogyny that's in a lot of different forms of Hinduism, the misogyny that's in the concept of the yin and the yang in Taoism. I think people, I wouldn't say it's that, maybe not so much that they're lazy, but I think that this is just my opinion, that because we live in the Western world where the majority of the people are affected mostly by different kinds of Christianity, Judaism and a bit of Islam, that's what really is affecting us every day in society. So I think that because we don't have an extremely, how do I say this? Because we don't have like large populations that are kind of equal to the Christian population, I think we don't really get much of a chance to have those discussions, I think, because like even in Canada, like we have, Good Friday is a stat holiday, but we don't have any stat holidays that are like, like the birthday of Buddha is not a stat holiday here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we just look at the ACA and our little footprint, there are no doubt more churches within a 1 mile walk of the Freethought Library than there are Buddhist temples in the entire county in which we reside. Right now, we're seeing all of the Christians closing all of the shops for holidays, and that's not something we experience from Buddhism. And to Richard's point earlier, the Buddhism that we do tend to experience is this much more secularized, maybe run through a like Western psychology laboratory version of Buddhism. So when people actually do sit down and want to do like comparative religion, the way you're discussing religious studies, I think that we do start to see a lot more of that like textual criticism of Buddhism. But in the sort of everyday, day-to-day life of many of the people watching this program, their only experience of Buddhism typically is going to have nothing to do with religious oppression. It's not going to have anything to do with these like outlandish metaphysical claims, and is actually going to be in many ways additive to their lives if they are using what we might call like Buddhist research into meditation or some of these like cultural traditions. So none of that is to say that you get a free pass for believing in absolutely ridiculous ideas, particularly when those ideas do lead to demonstrable harm, as you highlighted in the caste system and all of these kinds of things. So I think ultimately we're largely on the same page here. Anything that you might quibble with or want to push back on, Lise?
Yeah, I just really wanted to know what your opinion on that is, because I've criticized Eastern traditions in like various different atheist groups, and they're like, "What? That religion's not oppressive." I'm like, "Are you joking?" Like, well, I think people in North America and maybe parts of Europe as well, I think that when we think of Buddhism, we think of like mindfulness and meditation, and we don't really learn like the different ins and outs of, like, Buddhists do believe in the transcendental. Look at Mahayana Buddhism. Like,
Sure.
it's these are not purely just philosophies. These are religions that involve the transcendental that are just as ridiculous as Christian theology.
Right. And so
Absolutely.
is there value in sort of separating out mindfulness, meditation practice, some of these concepts from the larger like Buddhist label? I absolutely believe that there is. And so when I discuss Buddhist psychology, I don't often use that terminology unless I have an opportunity to sit down and really explain to somebody that these are concepts that maybe originated in some of these faith traditions that have then been rigorously tested and evaluated, and that don't have necessarily these same ties or don't obligate us to believe in some of these more irrational things. And I think that level of intentionality is sort of lacking in some of our word choice, just because we can't get irate about every problem on the planet just yet. And I think it makes sense that we would oftentimes be focused in other places. That doesn't mean that our ire is undeserving on other potential problems in the world.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for the conversation. I really appreciate you entertaining my question. So.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fascinating idea. I thank you for highlighting this, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. We appreciate your call so much.